hedge fund legend Mike Novogratz. He's diving straight into Wall Street's crypto craze with a big bet on Bitcoin. He joins us now for the Credit Suisse Bitcoin and Blockchain Conference here in New York City for an exclusive interview. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
People know you from Goldman Sachs. People know you from Fortress Investment. So what are you doing right now with Bitcoin? You're raising a fund?
You know, I started investing in Bitcoin and then the whole ecosystem when I was at Fortress. And then as a private investor, I've been very active in the space. And I never thought I'd actually come out of retirement, but the space is so exciting right now. Decided to build a business, and I've hired a whole bunch of smart guys, and we're going to raise a fund, we're going to build a business, and hopefully take advantage of the what I see as a revolution, actually, a decentralized revolution.
You're pouring a lot of money of your own into this fund. Reports say it's $150 million in what you hope to be a $500 million fund, Mike. Where are you investing right now? Is it strictly in the cryptocurrencies, or are you also investing in the underlying blockchain technology?
You know, I've been investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum, in lots of different ICOs, in venture in the ecosystem. We've mined. We took an approach way back that I just wasn't smart enough to know what exactly was going to win, and so play the whole ecosystem, and that's still our approach.
Where do you see Bitcoin going? I mean, a lot of people have a lot of crazy predictions out there. So, what's yours?
Listen, you know, the one thing I've realized recently is I can hear the herd coming. I was just in San Francisco. I met with a few big institutional investors, and they're still a ways away, but they're coming. Lots of funds are being raised, and so I'm pretty confident to say it's going higher. You know, the hard part about manias, and I think this will be a real mania, is you have to have a lot of imagination to think where things could go. And so often we set ourselves our own limitations by putting a price level on it. But you know, it would not surprise me if in the next 6 to 10 months we're over 10,000.
Over 10,000 in the next 6 to 10 months. Would you call this a bubble, Mike? I mean, if this were any other asset class, you'd say a move like that constitutes a bubble.
Well, you know, bubbles are funny because historically manias or bubbles happen around things that fundamentally change the way we live. If it's the railroad bubble or the internet bubble, they really did change the way we lived. This blockchain revolution, this decentralized revolution, is going to change the way we live. We've gone from kind of an experiment to now we're implementing. And I think just like in '97 when you thought about the internet, we could have never understood the ubiquity of the internet in 2017, even at the height of the bubble. 10 years, 15 years from now, you know, blockchain and decentralized systems will be everywhere. And so, yes, it's a bubble. It's going to be one of the great manias of all time. Bitcoin happens to be the bellwether of this entire decentralized revolution. And so it's the easiest way people can get exposure to it. And so I think Bitcoin probably runs the hardest. But things like Ethereum, I think, will be the public utility of this new space. And so we've split our bets, and we were betting on a lot of the other ICOs as well.
So the internet bubble imploded famously, Mike. So does that imply that Bitcoin, that bubble in Bitcoin will also have a similar sort of implosion? And how does that happen? What triggers that?
You know, right now, total market cap of the whole blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, ecosystem is roughly $200 billion. In 1999, the internet got up to around $6.5 trillion. And so we are a long, long way from what a mania looks like. And so, yeah, listen, prices will always get ahead of themselves in new technologies. And so, just like, you had a gold up and down, there'll be big volatility in this stuff. And at one point, there'll be a major correction. Why I think having a macro skill set and a macro hat to wear in investing this stuff is that you hope you understand when things run out of gas and try to get out before then. But I do think, just like in the internet, they're going to be companies that exist 20 years from now that really do change the way we do business.
Sure. Bitcoin, though, is a whole other asset class, Mike. And so I'm wondering, using that macro hat, what sorts of indicators are you looking at to tell you that Bitcoin is not in a bubble right now? And what sort of indicators are you going to look at to say, you know what, they're flashing warning signs to me? What out there are you looking at?
So I see Bitcoin really as a digital gold. It's become a store of value. And a lot of people say, well, how can that be a store of value? Well, but why was gold a store of value, right? There are 20 other metals you could have picked, but somebody picked gold, maybe because it was shiny. There's a limited supply. My kids walk around, I have 4 kids, 60% of the waking day, their head's in a phone. And so they're growing up in a digital world. One day, their boyfriend's going to give them digital flowers, and they're going to really enjoy the flowers. My mom would say, I want real flowers. But as we move into a digital world, having a digital store of value makes more and more sense. And so where could the price of gold or silver go in a speculomania? Who knows? There are a limited amount of Bitcoins. Very few people own them at this point. There are less than 5 million people in the whole that have crypto wallets. And it's a world that all has access. So you've got people in Taiwan, in Korea, in Japan, in India, in the United States, in over Europe that can participate. And so I think, you've got to let your imagination run on this one, and things can go for a lot longer and a lot higher.
Do you think Bitcoin will be disruptive in that way? I mean, now it's a speculative currency. Will it be something that will be what normal consumers will use and will disrupt the banking industry?
My opinion of Bitcoin is that, I think Bitcoin is probably a good thing, but it's essentially, its main thing will be, this will probably get quoted here and there, but I think it's primarily going to be a means of doing illegal transactions. But that's not necessarily entirely bad. It's not, some things maybe shouldn't be illegal. But
the combination of Silk Road and Bitcoin will save us?
Well, it will be useful for legal and illegal transactions. Otherwise, it would have no value as a use for a legal transaction, because you have to have a legal to illegal bridge. Yeah. I don't own any Bitcoin. Well,
I read a recent report where millennials, the majority of them, have less than $1,000 in their bank accounts. So how do you change the mind frame here?
Well, let's talk about the problem first. We've got a whole new generation of people graduating from colleges in all kinds of different degrees, or even just high school, not understanding how they're going to set up their financial future for retirement. Because if you think about what you have to do in your early 20s, you've got to put aside 10% of your salary, minimum, every week, and invest it in the market over the long run. Let's say it makes 6 or 7%. So if you start now and you're in your early 20s with your first job, by the time you're 65, and the average salary in America is about $52,000. So if you keep 10% of that and you invest it every month, you'll have about $1.2 million when you retire, which is enough to live off in America. That's the problem.
Okay.
Now, people say, well, I only have $1,000 in my bank account. I only make or have $50 free a week or $20 a week. And Apple, I want to buy a share of Apple. It's $150. I don't have $150 to do that with. That's when it hit me. Why not provide fractional share ownership? In other words, Beanstalks is an app. You download it on your phone. Everybody's familiar with their phones, either Android or Apple. And you can put $5 in, $20, $10, whatever you've got, and buy fractional shares of your favorite stocks. And why that's important is you start to learn about investing. Now, it has 1,000 different stocks on it. It's got 200 or 100 different ETFs. You can build an international portfolio. You can actually start to understand how to invest. And, we just brought it out a few weeks ago. There's over 5,000 people have started to work with it. And I talk to them about it. They say the most fascinating thing is I buy a stock, or I buy a basket of stocks, or I buy an ETF. I can't stop looking at my portfolio all day long, watching it go up and down. And that's the whole point of it. Because they're so used to using their phone, it becomes the new interactive.
And is it a younger audience? Are you seeing who's downloading it?
So the demographic's really interesting. What really blew me away is women are far more hip to this problem than men. So we've got a lot of women in their early 20s saying, yeah, I care about investing, and I'm going to start putting aside money from my paycheck. That's number one. Number two is I'm amazed about how interested people are in buying stocks of companies they know and trust. The idea of brand. So Apple's huge, Google's huge,
right.
Amazon's huge. But they're starting to understand the value of diversification, because When you have one stock, you get a lot of volatility based on that stock price going up and down. But when you have 3 or 5, all of a sudden you start to see, wow, the price isn't changing as much when the market goes up and down. And the concept of diversification and investing starts to permeate the thinking. What I'm learning is our demographics sort of 21 to 38 right now, more than half women, which blows me away. I'm so proud of that, because they actually are smarter about investing than men who aren't thinking about their futures. But the key is, once you start, it's really hard to stop, because you're saying, gee, this is working for me. I'm actually investing. I can see it work. Beanstox, I think, is going to continue to be a very interesting platform for me to promote, because I want people to have financial literacy.
You know, it's amazing. A lot of my friends are millennials, and they've never cared about investing, but all of a sudden they are crazy about it with Bitcoin, with the cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Hasn't that changed the landscape
Bitcoin to
here?
me is not a currency, it's an asset. People debate it all the time,
Right.
and I don't know if Bitcoin's the one that survives or some of the other ones happen. The point is, that is interesting, the fact that they would understand I can buy an asset, I can watch its value change, and I can somehow take value and park it in some place where I don't spend it, where I invest it for the future. Because the great thing about, you know, I'm not sure Bitcoins is a great long-term investment because I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I do know a company that makes free cash flow that pays you a dividend every quarter. To me, that is a good idea.
I know you love your dividend.
I love my dividends because my mother used to say to me, never spend the principal, only the interest. So I can invest in an Apple or Microsoft and get paid every 3 months, and I can buy a pair of shoes with that.
Bitcoin and things like it is the equivalent of the red pill, okay? We are entering a completely world of uncharted water right now.
Have you made any investments in Bitcoin?
So, I mean, I personally, I own Bitcoin in my hedge fund, I own Bitcoin in my fund, I own Bitcoin in my private account. It is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. Because what you're talking about right now is, for the next 3 to 5 years, an unbelievably better store of value. It is gold 2.0.
I think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually.
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin, and you know, people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin company, there is no Bitcoin building, there's not even a Bitcoin server anywhere that you could shut down. It is completely distributed. That's what's unique about Bitcoin. It is, for the first time, a way for the two of us to exchange value online without a third-party intermediary. Until the invention of Bitcoin, for you and me to exchange money online, we had to employ a third party, like PayPal, like Visa, like MasterCard, right? And we live in the 21st century. If we want to have a video call to China, we can do that for free. But to send a couple $100, which is essentially just ones and zeros being moved around, costs 5% plus takes over a day.
Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place, and of course for large transactions currency can get pretty inconvenient.
You'll see Bitcoin trading at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Rick Falkvinia does an excellent analysis. He predicts that Bitcoin will capture between 1 and 10% of the global Forex market, which implies a price of between $100,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin. Most of the people who are on the sidelines not buying Bitcoin today will start to buy Bitcoin when it gets over 1,000, and then a greater percentage of people will definitely plow into Bitcoin when it starts to get over 10,000.
It's still predicting Bitcoin, $10,000 per Bitcoin in 3 years.
Casares, he is the CEO of Zappo, which is a Bitcoin wallet and Bitcoin vault.
I think it's mostly a very positive thing. I think we're going to see ups and downs like with any other emerging technology, but I think Bitcoin is here to stay, and it makes sense that it be taxed and treated like any other.
So let's make a bold call here. In 10 years, what do you think Bitcoin will be worth? One Bitcoin?
Between $500,000 and $1 million.
A lot of people are just seeing the charts and thinking, how high will it go? What I'm doing is counting backwards. I mean, this is a transactional currency, and it is a store of value. As such, it is a product and a service competing on a very tangible market for stores of value and for transactional currencies. So what is the size of that market?
Right, and this is important.
And how big a market share can Bitcoin realistically take within a foreseeable time frame. When you ask that question, then you come up with a market cap of Bitcoin total, and then you divide that by the number of Bitcoin in circulation by your estimated time. And seeing how Chinese are buying Bitcoin like crazy, I actually had to adjust this number upwards. But then you come up with a number of about $2 to $5 million per Bitcoin.
It suggests that everyone go back to buy one Bitcoin. Not too much, only one is enough. If everyone in this world, people, just to go back buy one Bitcoin, you know, the Bitcoin value go to the $1 million. And when the Bitcoin have $1 million, you know, all around the world will be crazy, and everyone will be the follow, and the other digital currency just to be, you know, be grandson of the Bitcoin. So for me, I think for a lot of people, they don't exactly understand why is Bitcoin.
Is Bitcoin the currency of the future, or is it the payment system they're developing?
Bingo! It's the payment system. It's the blockchain encryption, and they're interesting things. I think Bitcoin, or the really blockchain encryption that's behind it, has a greater ability to bring more of the world's population out of poverty than anything we've seen.
If you're new to Bitcoin, take your time to go out there and Google it and learn about it. It truly is one of the most important inventions in the history of humankind, and certainly the most important invention since the internet. Go out there, make a Bitcoin wallet, get involved, start using it, learn about all the positive ways in which this is going to improve the lives of every single person on the planet. Get involved, do it today. It's going to help everybody. Thank you.
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin?
You're hitting me with a bunch of hard questions here. Bitcoin, early on, I summarily dismissed Bitcoin, and I shouldn't have. I didn't understand, truthfully, I don't understand the depth of the algorithms, the technology, and the fundamental foundation of Bitcoin. I didn't understand. I spent a lot of time trying to understand it in the last, call it 6 months. And I believe that the digital asset class of cryptocurrency is a real asset class. But in terms of kind of how the world views digital currencies, you know, we talk, when you look at global cash positions today, given global QE, they're now north of 110% of global GDP. So we're talking about almost $100 trillion worth of cash in the world. That has never happened before in world history. And so when I think about inflation, you're starting to see wages move. You're starting to see the price of all goods and services move. The thing that's been really deflationary in the globe has been technology. It's been a very positive deflationary force. And I think that's kind of that's played out. The technological deflation has played out. So now I think you're going to start to see inflation and wages move. And this gets into cryptocurrency. The collective value of cryptocurrency is a little over $100 billion today. Right? Global M2, global cash, it's like 80 trillion, $100 trillion. So what's $100 billion? The question is, what's it worth? And as a store of value, medium of exchange, and other currency, I don't think there's any true institutional investor has any money in Bitcoin. I know some have a little bit. They have nominal amounts invested, but I think it will be an asset class that will work over time. I'm not sure how to value it yet. I really have no idea.
Do you own it?
I don't.
No Bitcoin, no Ether?
I don't.
Are you tempted?
I say I wish I did, but I think there's a digital...
because you could have bought a lot lower.
I think there's a digital gold rush that's gone on. I think a whole bunch of people are going to lose a lot of money, right? These ICOs, you're going to see a bunch of them go completely broke. A bunch of them are frauds. And that's going to be problematic for all the people that just rushed in. And so I feel like it's a bit of a mania at the moment, but I think in the long term it's a viable asset class.
So at what point do you get in?
Well, I'll let you know when I do.
You've tweeted about various subjects, actually. It's interesting, your tweet experience. But one of the things you tweeted about was Bitcoin, that you were still thinking about a month ago now. We now have the LME saying that they're actually, CME, actually saying they're going to start trading in futures on
Bitcoins are a little too tangible for the London Metals Exchange.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yes.
So the CME is going to have futures with Bitcoin. Are you still thinking about it? And if Goldman customers, your customers, come to you and say, we really want to have this as part of our portfolio, do you have any choice but to get involved in Bitcoin?
Look, I have a level of discomfort with it, as I have a level of discomfort with anything that's new. But I've learned over the years that there's a lot of things that work out pretty well that I don't love. I remember when they first came out with cell phones. I'm thinking, why would anybody want this thing? It lasts, battery lasts about 10 minutes. It weighs a ton. You have to have it on your back. And there's phone machines every 15 feet. Why would anyone want this? Guess what? I missed that one. And here, I read a lot of history, and I know once upon a time, a coin was worth $5 if it had $5 worth of gold with it. And then a piece of paper was worth $5, but only if it was backed by gold in the treasury or silver in the silver certificate. And even then people were suspicious. Now we have paper that's only backed by fiat. The government says, I think that's what it's worth. Maybe in the new world, something gets backed by consensus. Right. Instead of a government fiat, maybe it's a consensual arrangement by people that agree that it's worth something, kind of like what social media does. It's not my natural state of comfort. But if you told me that, if we went into the future and Bitcoins were successful, I would be able to explain how it's a natural evolution from hard money. By the way, why is gold worth anything more than the jewelry value in gold? That's kind of a consensus that people have, because no government says, I'm going to pay you $1,300 an ounce from gold. It is that. If somebody, why is it worth that? You can't eat it. Why is it worth that? Because it's been like that for a long time. And so maybe 200 years from now, even someone like me might be comfortable with it. But right now, I tell you, I don't have an investment in it, but I'm not willing to poo-poo it, and that's why I say I'm open to it.
Anecdotally, Mike, we here at Bloomberg see a real hunger for information about cryptocurrencies and for information about blockchain technology. Is there yet a similarly real demand, if you will, for access to blockchain technology from clients, or even access to crypto as an investable asset from clients?
I'd say it's been fairly limited and concentrated in terms of interest. I don't know if you've tried to go, but I would encourage people to go, download it, and try and use it. Today, it's still pretty clunky. When you want to go to the corner store and get a loaf of bread or whatever you want to go on.
By the way, Mike Corbett just told you to go out and buy a Bitcoin for $7,000.
And try and use it and try the experience. And I think you'd find it today, my word, you'd probably find it a bit clunky. But again, we can't be dismissive on the underlying technology and ultimately what it represents in terms of the next things that are coming down the pike.
I love this idea that you introduced at the very beginning, that governments, or a government perhaps, like the U.S. government through the Treasury Department, might undertake to develop a cryptocurrency of its own. In the meantime, why is it that you think we haven't seen regulators, whether they be here, whether they be in the UK, whether they be in Europe, do what the Chinese have done, which is kind of put a stop to something that does make it almost impossible to comply with Know Your Client and anti-money laundering?
In some ways, there's the challenge that regulation actually stalls or impedes innovation. And so I think the regulators, again, it's a better question for them than for me, but as an observer, I would guess or likely say that they're intrigued by the innovation. They're intrigued by the underlying technology. I think there is a future to digital currencies, and rather than cut it off at this point, let it run a bit. But I do believe at the point that it truly does become meaningful and difficult to manage around tax collection, around criminal activity, around tax evasion, money laundering, etc., that governments will have something meaningful to say on that.
Bitcoin is a bubble. In fact, he says a cryptocurrency could soar to, get this, $500,000 in 3 years. The always controversial John McAfee joins us now. John, great to speak with you.
Great to speak with you. Thanks for having me on.
How do you get to $500,000 in 3 years?
Well, let's not worry about that. Let's worry about people calling
you got
the
a
bubble.
bet going online on that.
Yes, I do. People are calling Bitcoin a bubble that's bursting. Keep in mind that 2 months ago, Bitcoin was at $2,900, and people were saying it's never going to hit 3. Well, it hit 4 and it hit 5. If you look at the long-term trend of Bitcoin, it has been consistently up. I mean, who cares that it dropped $1,000 from $5,000 after it went from the 2,900 to 5,000 in 2 months. It's still ahead from what it was 2 months ago. You know, my company is one of the largest miners in America, and one of the nice things about mining is it doesn't matter what the price of Bitcoin is. We still make money. As the price goes down, there are fewer competitors for mining, and the difficulty rate decreases, and we simply mine more coins. So I know as well as anybody what the price of Bitcoin is, and it is consistently increasing.
I understand.
You're going, oh, wow, the bubbles burst. Go ahead.
You know, Jamie Dimon was very clear yesterday that he's a big fan of the blockchain technology, and most people actually who even, you know, call Bitcoin overvalued or what have you, they are believers as well in the blockchain technology. These are two separate issues. So why is that Bitcoin necessarily has to rise to these heights because you're a believer in blockchain? As you do, as you believe.
Well, no, I don't think that the Bitcoin rise has anything to do with the belief in the blockchain.
Okay.
It simply has to do with the belief in cryptocurrencies. I mean, once you start using cryptocurrencies, whether it's Bitcoin or Monero or Litecoin, it doesn't really matter. You see the facility, you see the ease of use, you see that without a central bank control, the value of that currency depends upon the users of that currency. And why is Bitcoin growing so fast? Because it's getting more users. More people are believing. If I do a transaction with a credit card, I have to put in my name, my address, my credit card number, the code on the back, my billing address. Well, that takes 5 or 10 minutes, especially for someone my age. But with Bitcoin, it's 15 seconds. Give me your wallet address, here's the amount, done. Once you see the facility of cryptocurrencies, once you see how fast they are transacted, then suddenly fiat currencies, credit cards, central banks make no sense whatsoever.
Maybe it's too easy, though, John. I mean, how do you... I'm sure the government would like to track where this Bitcoin is going, and they would love to tax people on this. And so if you use Bitcoin, you may not have that sort of paper trail, so to speak, as to where people are making revenues or earning money. So are you concerned that government intervention in some way could actually slow this down?
Well, it can slow it down, but there will be government intervention. Why? Because as people start using more and more cryptocurrencies, things like Monero, which cannot be tracked at all, when they start using these things, suddenly governments are going to start losing income tax revenues. And they're going to panic, and they're going to say, this is against the law. But how do you stop something that cannot be stopped? I mean, this is not something unique to America where you can just shut it down. I mean, I can use the Tor browser or the Onion browser and access Bitcoin wallets all over the world, and no one will ever know. The government does not have enough enforcement personnel to ever stop Bitcoin, Monero, Litecoin, and all of the others. So they're going to have to face reality, find some other way to raise revenues. This is a fact.
So, John, I got to ask you, because most people know you as a cybersecurity pioneer. They know the firm that is named after you. In between that time and now, you had a very interesting life. And actually, some reports say that, you know, it's the insane life of John McAfee, that you once lived in Belize, which is true, allegedly got caught up with drugs and other illegal activities. Bitcoin has a bad rap of being used in the underground. That's why people want to use it, because they want to conceal nefarious activity. Do you see that potential? Are you concerned about that as attracting government regulation?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm still a security specialist, and I keep track of the dark web. Bitcoin is very seldom used anymore on the dark web. It has been replaced by Monero as the currency of choice, because Monero is absolutely anonymous, cannot be tracked, either sender or receiver of any transaction. They're literally invisible. So it's not Bitcoin itself, but cryptocurrencies as a general group of things that are being used on the dark web. And that will always be the case. Bitcoin used to be the one because that was the only one available, but not anymore. So Bitcoin is sort of out of the dark web and into the light. And 99.99% of its use is legitimate.
So, you know, John, I don't know if you know about this, but, you know, Jamie Dimon watches the show pretty frequently. He's probably listening to you right now. I mean, do you have any words for him as to why he's got it wrong? I mean, would you want to place that same bet that you made on the internet with Jamie Dimon, for instance?
No, I would like to say this, Mr. Dimon. I respect you, sir, for your position. You know, people who rise to your position are not idiots. However, sir, What is, you called Bitcoin a fraud. I'm a Bitcoin miner. We create the Bitcoins. It costs over $1,000 per coin to create a Bitcoin. What does it cost to create a US dollar? Which one is the fraud? Because it costs whatever the paper costs. But it costs me and other miners over $1,000 per coin. It's called proof of work. We have put massive amounts of computing power and electricity in creating these coins. Surely there's some value in that work that we did to create the coin. And the fact that Bitcoin is consistently growing in its use and in its value has to say something. You know, sure, it will rise and fall, and it is highly volatile, as all new technologies are.
Right.
And at the same time, it is certainly not a fraud.
So you're pretty sure that you're not going to lose this bet that you have on Twitter?
No, I don't ever lose bets. Sorry for my bets.
All right, then. John McAfee, great
right.
to speak with you. Thank you.